time out of their life and their schedule to read the book, and I'm just delighted to talk to you.
We're so excited. I'm getting my notes open. I know I sent you the questions so that way you have them as well, because I didn't want to like blind you with anything. But now I have to open them up for myself because there we go. Okay. So we were talking about the book a little bit before we got started. We really enjoyed it. So that was
Thank you.
fun. A lot
Which
of us,
one did
it
you
was
guys read?
what was that?
Which one did you read? Did you read Ne'er-Do-Well or Earl Crush?
So we read Ne'er-Do-Well as the first one. Some people started ahead and got to book two. Some did not. I
Okay,
was hoping to get to book two because I have Your Ladies in Hating as an arc for the store that I was really excited for, which we see behind you. So we might have some questions on that one. But let's just start with what drew you to writing historical romance? Because it's not a genre that you see very often anymore.
Yeah, well, you know what? I have been reading romance for 25 years. My mom gave me my first romance when I was 11,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
which was a historical romance, which was Whitney, My Love, which if you've ever read Whitney, My Love, like that is a choice. That is a choice that she made to give me this book. He like beats her with a riding crop. I was
Oh, and your mom gave this to you at
my
11?
mom gave this book to me, yes. And you know what? She was right because here I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read that book and I absolutely loved it, devoured it, ate it up, was like, where are all the rest? How can I read this forever and ever? And I've been reading romance ever since for 25 years. So yeah, so when I grew like sort of started reading romance when I was younger, historical was a much bigger portion of the market than it is now. I mean, you would go into a bookstore and probably half the romances would be historicals. So I definitely think that's part of it. It's just like what I grew up loving. But I just have a lot of fun. Kind of it's a familiar enough universe that I don't have to like spend a lot of time world building. You know what I mean? Like everybody's kind of familiar with like the Jane Austen extended universe. You know what I mean? Like we have kind of a sense of like what that would be like. So I don't have to do a ton of world building, but it does give some of that kind of escapist, like I don't have to think about like my own sort of what's happening in my day, like my job and my IRA or my whatever, I don't have to worry about health insurance, things like that. So I think there's a lot of fun for me, but I also think that historicals can give a perspective on our contemporary moment like that may be a little bit different, right? I think that they can offer some sort of a new lens or a new vocabulary for thinking about issues that we're still thinking about right now today. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So when you're writing the historical romance, is there any like historical details or research you really have to do to make sure like things are, accurate? Can you find that like kind of challenging?
Yeah. I love the research part of it. I think if I didn't like it, I probably wouldn't write historicals. It's really fun for me. It definitely, for me, like I always had loved historicals, but I didn't try to write a historical until after I got my PhD. And in that process of like going to graduate school, that was when I felt like I really learned like how to do research. Like before that, I was like, where would you even start? Like how would you even like, but it's funny because you'll spend so much time on something and you realize like that was like one sentence. You'll be like, all right, I need to say like she unbuttons the buttons on her jacket. And then I'm like, well, what would the buttons be made of? And then like, 6 hours have passed. And I'm like, mother of pearl. Like, okay, whoo, glad I spent 6 hours to find that one phrase. So it could definitely be, you can definitely kind of fall down rabbit holes, but I really enjoyed doing the research for the books. It's really something. It's a great, fun, kind of delightful part of the process for me.
Speaking of research, was there any research that you've done in general that maybe didn't make it into the books that you just found super intriguing?
Yeah, so much. So I always like say, for Ne'er Do Well when I was writing it, and she has this like secret library full of these erotic texts, and I wanted them to be real books. Like I wanted to, like when I talked about what she was sort of giving out or had as part of her catalog, I wanted them to be real books that people could really read, in 1815. So I had to do so much research into like these, I mean, some of them are like very serious, like medical treatises, but some of them were just like, sexy books that people liked and, had book clubs and talked about and passed around with their friends, as we do today. So man, I have learned so much about like 18th and early 19th century erotica that I never knew, that I never imagined. And so one thing that I learned that's not in the book because there was no way to fit it in. But like, you know how there's like sort of a trend, like, in KU and whatnot of like sentient object, like romances, like the
Mhm.
tour, or cheese or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was like a huge thing in the 18th century. They
Oh,
loved it.
wow.
There are like magic rings that people, there is a sofa. So there's one where the guy he's cursed and he's transformed into a sofa. And this is in the 18th century. And he can't untransform until a pair of virgins have had sex on him, which is actually weird. Like, why are they doing it on the sofa, right? Like, why aren't they doing it in the bed? So the book is like all of the other exploits that happen on
Oh my God.
until the end when he finally gets turned back into a person. Yeah, so that's a real 18th century book.
Yeah, so
It's
the
called
consensus is,
The Sofa.
yeah, the consensus is you're gonna have to email us what the name of that book is. Now we're all interested.
The Sofa. Very. I mean, it's in French actually. It's Le Sofa.
Oh, somebody awesome. Okay. One of the other questions that was turned in is when you're writing your book, do you plot out your books in detail or do you prefer to discover the story as you write it?
So I'm a big plotter. I like to have the whole thing, like a sense of like what the arc is going to be. It helps me a lot because there are certain scenes that are a lot more fun for me to write and other scenes that I dread writing. So it's kind of like I have that dangling carrot of like, oh, I know that this fun scene is coming and I only have to get through 2 more chapters or, whatever it is. So I like to plot. That doesn't mean that the plots always work. So like with Earl Crush, for example, I really rewrote like a ton of Earl Crush. Like the whole first half of the book, I completely threw away and started from scratch. And that was because as I was writing, the characters in Earl Crush, they're both like, I won't spoil it if you've not read it, but they're both shy. They're both kind of like reserved. And so they wouldn't do anything. Like, so the first, when I was first writing it, I was like 180 pages in, and all they had done was like, move their pinkies slightly closer. I was like, you guys, what? You're not you. They would just look at each other and like yearned. So in Earl Crush, I really had to throw a lot more plot at them. Like in Ne'er-Do-Well, Peter and Selena, they really like drive the plot. They really like their choices like make things happen. And in Earl Crush, it is the exact opposite. The plot happens to them. They are just rolling with this plot. That was the only way I could get them to act on their feelings.
Okay, that kind of leads to my next question is, as you plot, obviously you have a way that the book's gonna go, but then as you're writing it, has any of the characters like surprised you that you're like, nope, I didn't have to write that part?
Oh
You
yeah.
talk about it for Earl Crush, but what about with like Ne'er-Do-Well? Did anything like that possibly happen?
Absolutely. And that's kind of like the fun of writing when like those moments of like, oh, I didn't like that just like really surprised me, or I didn't really see that coming, or something happens, and you're like, oh, now I feel like I really understand this character. I have a short novella that's free on my newsletter. And I always like sort of come to this little novella because this hero, the male main character, he did not want to follow my outline. It was so much work keeping this man on track. And it was because in every scene, he just wanted to like be like, I'm in love with you. And I'm like, we're on page 30. Like, sit down. I gotta write the rest of the story. You can't get there yet. And I swear, like every single draft or every chapter that I drafted from his POV, he was just like declaring his love. And I kept like having to delete it and be like, get in line, sir. There's a whole lot we have to get through.
So much. Um, so are there any maybe romance authors or books that like influence your writing style?
Yeah, definitely so many. When I was first like, coming to romance, an author that really, I feel like really kind of formed like the style, I guess, that I tried to write in was Amanda Quick, who she was kind of like one of the early like Regency rom-com writers, which is kind of where I see my books falling into. Like they're historical, but they're also meant to be funny. Like they're meant to be kind of a romp and have lots of hijinks and
Oh, yeah.
shenanigans. So she was absolutely doing that, and I just read them and I thought they were so delightful and joyful. And then like sort of moving as I sort of kept reading, someone like Tessa Dare really was like a big influence on me as well. Tessa Dare's books very similarly are historical and very funny and very rompy. But I think what I try to do is like, even though there are lots of hijinks and sort of goofy plot points and devices, and there's zebras in Earl Crush or whatever, like I try to really have a lot of emotion and a lot of heart. That's what I'm going for. And that's something that I think Tessa Dare does really beautifully.
Amazing. Let's see what else. Okay, this was a fun question. So if Narrative Well was made into a movie, who would you cast as Peter and Selena?
Okay, you sent me this question and I just like so
That's
here's
why
the
I said it
thing.
ahead of time.
I don't really know celebrities, and people ask me this question and I don't. So if you guys have any ideas, feel free to share them with me. I would love to hear them because I don't know. People ask me this and I'm just like, I'm so sorry.
I also don't TV, so I can't tell you anybody to help, but if we think of it, we'll email it over to you.
Okay, yes, you
Does
send it
anybody
to me.
have somebody
Exactly.
that they see?
I could think you could do Anya Taylor-Joy. She was recently in,
I know who that is.
yeah, okay. She was in that a couple years ago, reproduction of Emma.
Yeah.
I thought she did a great job. I think she
Yeah.
could play off a good Selena.
I love that. Yeah. She seems what?
They said I had to Google her, but yes, I see it.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one. And she seems very like smart and like she could really kind of like, like move some move the pieces around on the chessboard.
Oh yeah. So some of us read it with, our eyes, but some people did the audiobook. And one of the questions about the audiobook was the narrator does some sort of American accent. We couldn't really tell if it was like Southern or not, for Peter. And we were just wondering, like, was that intentional? Like, did you research that beforehand, or was that narrator just like, well, I'm gonna do a Southern accent because it said he's from Louisiana?
So yeah, my experience with audiobooks, and I have been lucky enough to have 5 of my books made into audiobooks in the US, and 2 in the UK. So it's really been cool. The UK audio is completely different. It's dual narrators, so it's a totally different experience. Okay. So my experience has been that they send me like a 1-minute sample and they're like, do you want person A or person B? And I say, oh, I'll take person A, and then the book comes out. So that has been my experience with how audiobook production works. So whatever choices they make are their choices and their domain. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I think that's good because that's their job and not mine. And I don't know anything about being a voice actor or making an audiobook. So that's I don't want to have a voice in there. That's their job.
That's totally fair. I think you had said there's not a lot of research out there
I
that
do like this smidge of research of like, what does, American accents sound like in the early 1800s? Because we're not too far removed from the Revolutionary War and British immigrants, I guess you want to call them, colonizers still coming in. So that was my question. I was just curious.
Yeah. I don't think we have a really strong sense of what that accent would have sounded like. Also, Louisiana for much of Peter's life would have been a French colony. So, that like really like I think you probably could have done a French accent and also had that be like fairly realistic. So, but yeah, those were her choices, not mine.
Good to know. Let's see what else was asked. Okay, if you're not writing, what are you reading? What type of romance are you reading?
I read a lot of historical. I know some authors say like that they don't like to read in their genre, they like to read other things, but I read a ton of historical. I am reading right now. So in our Facebook group, I run a historical romance Facebook kind of like book club. So right now we're reading this series by Mary Ballog, which these are like probably 20-ish years old. They're kind of some of the like greatest of all time, like greatest hits of historical romance. It's called the Bedouin series, and they're really fun and they're just delicious. So I'm reading those right now. This is a book. I made a little stack for you guys. This I haven't read this yet. But this just came out like maybe 2 weeks ago or so. And I'm really eager to read it. It's a historical romance. The hero is a trans man. So I'm very eager to read this one, although I have not yet. But look at that beautiful spine.
That's so pretty.
I like it. So anyway, so I don't know. I've not read it yet, but I'm very eager. It's right on the top of my TBR right now. I also enjoy romantasy, paranormal. I don't read a lot of contemporary romance. I think I just would like to not think about this current.
You want an escape. You don't want real life. We get that.
Right. Yeah, so I read a lot of like romantasy and paranormal also.
Awesome. If you weren't writing historical romance, what do you think that you would write instead?
Well, but next year,
Oh,
if one were in a bookstore, one might be able to find my paranormal romance. Yeah, so yeah, this is not like officially announced, but yeah.
okay. That leads to my next question is what can you tell us about what you're working on, whether it be Ladies in Haining or elsewhere?
Yeah, I have a lot coming down in the pipeline. I've been very lucky to kind of have gotten a few different publishing contracts in the last few years. So Ladies in Hating, Ladies, are the last Belvar's book. So this is Georgiana's book. So, at the end of Ne'er Do Well, we find out that she is a Gothic novelist. And Ladies in Hating is 7 years later. She's only 18 in Ne'er Do Well. I was like, I need to age her up a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's 7 years later. She's been a successful Gothic novelist all this time, and this sort of rival Gothic novelist appears on the scene, this sort of anonymous woman, and Georgiana becomes convinced that this rival is stealing her ideas and is like stealing like in a slightly unhinged way. So she's like, I'm gonna track her down and I'm gonna unmask her and I'm gonna tell her to stop stealing my ideas. So she tracks her down and finds out who she is, and in so doing realizes that it is this woman that she had like an absolutely huge crush on when she was a teenager. And she's like, oh, never mind. I don't want to, unmask you. Anyway, so they're rivals and they end up getting sort of trapped in this like haunted manor as they're researching their next book. So that's the next one. That's the little dog that they rescue in their around. Still there. He's on all the covers. So that's the Ladies. So Ladies in Hating comes out in September. Next year, I do have another historical romance in the pipeline, which is Scheming of You, and it should be out next spring. It's done also. All these books, like publishing just takes so long. So it's done. It is about the short pitch is a trio of heiresses on the lam forge an invitation to a country house and accidentally infiltrate a band of smugglers. So they show up at this country house and the staff is like very suspicious and they're like, why are they acting so suspicious? And it turns out they're not really the staff, they're a band of smugglers living in this abandoned country house. So yeah, so it's very lots of scheming, lots of hijinks. It's quite fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Let me see. I think that's okay. So you want to know more about the paranormal, if you can say anything, because there's some paranormal.
So yes, so I have not announced this yet. So probably like the publisher would not want me to like drop.
Remember, this is recording before you send anything.
Yeah, I think we're gonna announce it this summer. Although it sold quite a while ago, they just like time these things from various ways. So it's gonna be a vampire book. It's kind of a murder mystery. It's definitely a romance. Vampires. Yeah, I don't want to say more, but
No, we understand, but that's so exciting.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Stay tuned for Paranormal. It also has jokes. It's like instead of ball gowns, we have like vampires. The jokes are the same, the sexiness is the same. There's just like maybe a little more murder and blood.
Love that. Let me double check. I think that was all the questions that got turned in. They said the last question is, so when are you coming to Oklahoma?
I would love that. That would be so fun. I don't know. We have not made any plans for the Ladies in Hating travel, so man, I don't know. Maybe September. Who knows?
I'm just gonna say, we know an amazing bookstore here in Oklahoma City with some
Awesome.
really great people. So if you need a book recommendation, like we'll help you over here. Awesome.
Thank you.
Ladies, I know I asked you to turn in questions, but has anything popped up while we're meeting that you want to discuss? Come on up.
Oh, come on.
I'm like, we're gonna make you.
You're gonna stand.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Danielle. So the ladies in hating, so if someone was just like wanting to jump into like a sapphic historical romance, would you consider that a standalone by itself, or would you recommend them reading the first two books?
I think you could definitely start with Ladies in Hating. Definitely don't think you need to have read the other ones. And in fact, a number of people have said that they've just read this one first. And I think it's totally fine. I think like it's fun if you've read the other ones because it's like, oh, there's Selena, but like you don't have to.
Anybody, come on up.
So we gotta like whisper into the camera.
I'm here to contact you about your car's extended warranty. I'm just kidding. Was Ne'er-Do-Well the original title, or did that take some like bouncing around before you got to that title?
Yes, that was always the title. Like from when I first, so Ne'er-Do-Well was my first novel that I published. And so it was the first time I had ever tried to publish anything. So I wrote it, and then I had written other books before, but this was the first one that I really like tried to publish. Actually, this is kind of a cute story. So I had been like talking about publishing a book for like 10 years. And my husband finally in 2021 for my birthday, he like made me a list of literary agents who were taking like romance manuscripts. Yeah, I know. It was ready. He was like, you've been wanting to do this for a long time in here, and he spent all of this time coming. I know. It's really cute.
That's an amazing husband.
I know. So anyway, so it still took me like 6 months to get up the nerve to like do it, but I finally got up the nerve and I queried agent. So it was always called Ne'er-Do-Well. From the first when I sent it out to agents. And a lot of agents were like, I'm not interested in this book, but great title. Yeah, so that was always the title. They never talked about changing it at the publisher. Earl Crush never had a title. I just called it Lydia and Arthur's book, and I was like sent it to my editor, and I was like, hopefully someone comes up with something. And my agency, my literary agency, actually came up with Earl Crush, which I thought was quite charming. Ladies in Hating was an absolute and I actually really love this title. I actually really love Ladies in Hating. I think it's very funny. It fits the book. It has a vibe. But it was such a bear to title. I must have sent them like 60 titles and they rejected all of them. And I was like, you're just gonna have to come up with something because I can't. But they kept pushing me, and I did finally eventually come up with Ladies in Hating, which they liked and I like. So, I guess they were right. But it was such a bear. There was one day, one 24-hour period where we exchanged like 30 emails just about the title. I was like, guys,
That's a lot.
Pick something. I don't even care what you call it. But I am very happy with where we landed.
That's amazing. Can you share some of the titles that you threw out there for Ladies in Hating?
So, gosh, it's like hard to remember now. It's been like Ladies in Hating for so long. I think for a while, I thought it was going to be called Who's That Lady? Which is also cute, which I like. I think Ladies in Hating is better though. So I think they were right to like push me on that. In my drafts, it was always called Lady Darling, which is one of the novelists, like that's her name. That's her like anonymous pen name. So that was just what I was called in my drafts, but no one ever liked that except me. So that was never under consideration. I had kind of while I was waiting for Ne'er-Do-Well to come out after, I had gotten my agent and everything, I self-published some novellas, and those novellas have like these long, like 9-word titles. And I was like, that's my like, I just got to do what I wanted because they would never have let me get away with these like long 9-word titles. But then the publisher bought them. So now they're coming, now they're eventually coming out in print, and they have in fact shortened the titles.
Yeah, so Margot Halifax.
Yeah. Yes.
Any
Like,
other questions?
If anyone has anyone read the Halifax books? I don't,
Did you read it? No.
I'm just new with them.
Can you tell us why Peter pushed Selena in the puddle?
Yes. Okay, so I do have a bonus scene. If you sign up for my newsletter, you can get this scene where they first meet. It's quite short. He didn't mean to push her in the puddle, but she's swimming and he surprises her in the woods. So she's not dressed. She's got like a little shift on. And he tries to steal her horse. And then he falls off the horse and lets it go. This is very painful. Yeah. And so the horse like runs away, and then he like feels it sort of trots home, and she's like, great, now I'm gonna have to walk. And she's like all mad. And he's like, well, I'm gonna take your bag for you. Like, that would be very nice of me. I feel bad that I tried to steal your horse and then I let it get away and I, interrupted you. And she won't let him because she's like, I don't know you, you're a stranger. And he's like, no, it's fine. I'm a guest of your brother. I'm supposed to be here. And she's like, no, you can't have my bag. And anyway, then he tries to take it.
That's hilarious.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, I do have a question. I liked Lady Selena's brother Nicholas and Daphne, and I think their story is really cute. Could I have a prequel? Just them. They sound really adorable.
I love them too. This is the hard thing about writing is that for me at least, is that like I want to fill the book with cast of characters who have their own backstories, right? Like who have their own things that are happening to them in their own lives. They're not just like props to make Peter and Selena's romance happen. You know what I mean? Like they have things that they want and their own histories and their own pasts. And I try to do that in all my books so that it feels like a richly developed cast of characters. But then I fall in love with them and I'm like, oh, maybe you need a book. Oh, maybe you need a book. So like in Earl Crush, Lydia has 4 brothers, and I am like every one of those brothers I have like a book planned for but I don't know when I'm gonna write it. Like I just would need infinite time. But I do sort of fall in love with the characters. And I had originally like I didn't know anything about publishing, and so I was like, this will be a 4-book series. And I thought, like obviously Selena and Peter in book 1, and then I was like, Lydia will have a story, Georgiana will have a story, and Iris will have a story. And Iris is in my mind gets together with Selena's brother Will, the one who's off, like they're writing the letters. But then they apparently like a 4-book series is actually a very hard sell in publishing. Like I guess usually every subsequent book in a series does a little worse than the previous book. So they really like to restart you and kind of like start fresh with the first book in a new series. So they wouldn't go for a 4th book. But in my mind, there is a 4th book. So I don't know,
Write
maybe
the
someday.
transcript and just self-publish.
Right. No, yeah. If I can like find the time in my life schedule, I would love to self-publish a 4th book because I do have like a whole story in my mind for Iris and Will. And that poor Will, like I just like left him like sad, like alone in Waterloo. You know what I mean? Like it's quite dark actually. So I can't just leave him like that.
Anybody else? Amazing. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us. We really appreciate it and are really excited to read what else you come up with.
Thank you so much. Well, it's delightful to be here. Thank you for all the lovely questions and for reading Ne'er-Do-Quell.
Yeah. All right. I'm awkward about like ending things, so I'm just gonna
Bye.